Welcome to the Laser Lounge podcast, and I'm your host, Alicia Pate. This is your premier destination for all things laser and beyond. Whether you're deep into the CO2 and galvo laser community, or you're exploring the world of CNC and woodworking, we've got you covered. Join us as we dive into a vast array of topics, from creating amazing projects with your lasers to making savvy business and marketing decisions. Our show is brought to you by our fantastic sponsors. They are Thunder Laser USA, Phantom CNC, Rotoboss Rotary Attachments, and Hotien Laser. We're here to inspire, inform, and ignite your passion for making. So tune in and let's create something special. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
I'm good, Alicia. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm doing some things on my side over here just to make sure we're all up and recording right now. How are you doing? What is it, Thursday? What's going on in your world before we get into introductions? What have you been doing today?
Well, actually, it is my daughter's 24th birthday today, which is very exciting. So doing a lot of texting back and forth, but today has been a day of running the Thunder. I ran the UV, doing some glass stuff, just a little bit of everything. Filling orders and preparing for Christmas is really where I'm at.
Well, that's good to hear that you're already working that Christmas angle, because I've been harping a little bit on people getting started. I need to myself. I've thought about it. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to do any shows or not, but so that's good that you're doing that. So,
Yep.
Well, welcome to the show today. You've never been on our live stream, and so I asked you this early this week. I'm like, hey, do you want to come on? And you're like, what? And I'm like, great, we'll pencil you down. I didn't really give you an option, so thank you for joining in. You know, May and I have done these for about a year and a half, and we've done some that are technical, some are business, and I kind of wanted to bring in, kind of meet the maker in our community and just kind of talk to some people so that other people can kind of, can I relate to her? Like, am I in that space, and kind of just hear from others in their community than just me. So thank you again for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me. Although my heart is pounding and going crazy, I'm here.
Oh, girl, you'll be fine. So for those of you who are joining live, thank you. I know that most of you are working or doing stuff in your shops. And so we know most of our people will be listening to this later, and we're going to turn it into a podcast if that's your form of method that you like to hear and learn things. So feel free to listen later. If you're on live stream, we can field some questions for you in the chats, and so I'll feed those to Amanda. So Amanda Schwarz. So I met you about a year ago at Lightburn Conference?
Yes.
And so we kind of hit it off and kind of gravitated toward each other as kind of maker friends, because we kind of were like in the same level of maturity space, right? With where we are in the same kind of age demographic, and we liked making things. We both kind of like bigger things, like with wood and et cetera. And so that's kind of how I met you. And before you introduce yourself, I just thought you'd be a great candidate to come on, because you're not just the typical maker who just got a laser and started. Your background is more started from the woodworking, I believe, space world. And so your skill set and your bench depth is pretty deep as far as some of the things you can do. So that being said, just give us a little introduction. Tell us a little about yourself, your journey in the woodworking and the laser space. So go ahead, Amanda.
Absolutely. So back in 2000, I will say some people start their businesses very intentionally. They're getting a laser and they're getting started. Other of us came about it not intentionally at all. I actually had some heritage barnwood from our family farm. My kids are the fourth generation to live here. And I was making something personally for my husband's family to kind of hold on to a piece of great grandpa's history, and showed it to a friend. And she said, you could sell those. And that's how it started for me in a woodworking capacity. And within a year, though, I knew that I wanted to either add last names or verbiage to some of the reclaimed art and reclaimed art and signs that I was making out of reclaimed lumber. And everybody was doing vinyl, and reclaimed lumber and vinyl didn't mix. Plus everybody was already doing it. And so I was looking for what else is there out there. So I actually, for the first 3 years of when brought that into my business, I hired that work done. So I just want to throw that out there too. Everybody wants to get a laser to start. Well, sometimes you can, find somebody in your community who has a laser already and see if that world is right for you. So for 3 years, I did the designing and the creating and would send a gal my files. She'd laser it, and a couple days later, I'd swing by and pick it up. And in 2018, though, it had got to the point that I knew I wanted to expand my business. I no longer wanted to just do simple last names. I wanted to bring in scripture and quotes, because to me, words are powerful, and I wanted to get those into people's homes. And so that led me on a deep dive of purchasing a laser. I got my first one in, like I said, the summer of 2018. I started big. It had a 36 by 48 bed. It was a rabbit laser from a company here in the United States that was selling Chinese lasers, but had support. And that honestly,
that's a big laser to jump in on.
And I had no experience. I've got, everything I have done in the woodworking world and in the laser world is self-taught and kind of done the hard way, but you learn what works and you learn what doesn't work. There wasn't a lot of Facebook groups back then. Lasers were still relatively new. And so it was a lot of trial and error, but got that first one, began to expand my business with ornaments, other signs on reclaims, just bringing in, actually, you see them right behind me. That's a plywood. It's actually MDF sign that's painted and distressed. Was able to bring that side in to be able to bring in a lower price point than the reclaimed lumber and be able to have like a middle ground price point. And then just my business continued to grow. And in February of 23, actually at the end of 22 is when I invested in a Thunder Nova 63. I needed to go bigger. I do big stuff. Anything with a little bed doesn't necessarily work for me because I do signs that are 10 foot long.
Yeah.
And so when I got the Thunder Nova 63, it was like, holy crap. It was a huge upgrade for me because I went from being able to cut through 1/4 inch material to being able to cut through 1 inch material or more, and much larger bed, all of that. And so that's kind of been the progression of my business until what we'll get to in just a bit with the UV.
Yeah. So, and during this time, you're still doing heavy woodworking though, right? Would you say
Oh
prior
yeah.
to this last laser, you're probably, I'm going to just guess for you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you probably are 65, 70% just core woodworking, and then the lasers were complementary to that, right?
That's exactly right. What I have used a laser for is to add a name, to add a scripture, to add a quote.
Okay.
Actually, like, yes, this is, there's an engrave in the background, but laser elements. So like I do a lot of scripture, a lot of sympathy signs. So I'm doing a lot of, now I use, dual tight, but I did a lot of super gluing of laser items onto other signs.
And I asked that for a specific reason, because I think it's one of the reasons why you are open to adding another tool to your shop, because what I'm seeing in the space, or at least with my lens, and I talk to many makers across, is that a lot of them started out of the woodworking space and they are adding lasers as another tool, just like if it was a bandsaw or, some kind of sled that they added to their table saw or whatever. It's a capability, right? And so it opens up some more doors. So thank you for giving us that background. And you have,
from a wood shop side of things, I've got a full wood shop, and people will say, so what does your husband do? And I just want to throw this out there because as a female maker who, when you go, I know there's other women out there who walk into a hardware store and everybody's like, oh, so you're picking this up for your husband. This is my business. My husband works a full-time job and farms 1,000 acres. We live busy lives. So everything I have done, I have learned from scratch and taught myself from that perspective. And I run all my large power tools. I do all of that.
Yeah.
So
women, I see that in a lot of your, yeah, absolutely. And I see that in practice with you. Before we get into really today's meat of the topic, Who's your who? I know that you've defined that, but who is your who so that when we're talking and you talk about some of the things you're making, it can kind of, hit the audience of why that's so important. So go ahead.
When you ask who's my who, you're asking who's my end client or what's my why?
Yeah. No,
My
who's your
end
end
client.
client target audience? Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. I have my own website. And so I do a lot of the majority of my business is direct to consumer.
Mhm.
I do work with some floral shops and boutiques that I sell wholesale to, that sell my product as well. And I work with a lot of realtors in our local area, um, on that side of things, or others that are looking for a very specific item to be able to gift.
Perfect. I think that helps whenever we start talking about kind of your new tool and how you're using it. It kind of explains to people how that's fitting in with your core clients. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. What inspired you to add a new laser to your workshop? Like, how did that progression start? And I'm gonna try to keep my mouth shut because so
You know.
okay.
Oh.
So when did you start thinking about it? Were you thinking about, I just need another tool? Or were you specifically looking at this type because you thought you were missing a capability?
I was looking between a fiber and a UV, and last fall is when I started looking. And you were a huge part of that. You and May, and one of your lives that you did doing the compare and contrast.
Yeah.
And if you haven't watched it, people, go back and watch it. That was really huge for me because I knew the products, I knew my demographic, I knew my niche, I knew the products my customers knew me for. And, I still wanted to stay true to what Rustic Lux Designs looked like. I just wanted to be able to evolve that product, continue to add to that product line. So you guys were a huge part of that. I did a lot of um, just stalking on Facebook groups of like, what are people using these different types of machines for?
Yeah, and I think that's, a good point when you said I was either wanting a fiber or a UV. So you knew you wanted some type of galvo, but you were trying to figure out which one is going to do what product. And I think that's kind of the not that it's not that the content is not out there for it, but it's not as visible. I think, of well, which one does what? Because I can talk to people and they're like, I think I want a fiber because I want to do, plastic. And I'm like, wrong machine. So
Mhm.
we'll try to hit on those hot points as we go through and you're talking about things that it's a differentiator and why you chose it. So what did you end up getting?
I got a Hayotian 10-watt UV.
Awesome. And you got that in April, you said?
Yep.
April. So you've had a few months to play with it.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about what you think. Just overview and, your how it's impacting your shop, if how much you use it, etc.
Um, it's incredible. And I have like I said, I've got a Thunder Nova 63 that I use every day. Um, I love that machine. I had no idea the improvement in the fine engraving and the fine marking that I was going to be able to do to see that difference with that dot size and just the different materials. Um,
I
I
think that's something that,
probably,
with the dot size, you're saying that, we've said it before, the dot size is so small, you really don't understand the detail until you use one. And then you're
correct.
like, wowza. And
Yeah.
not that the others are bad. Their purpose was not to be super fine detail. You could just do beautiful pictures on this thing.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, oh, I just literally lost what I was going to say. I don't know. Go ahead.
That's
Ask me
okay.
another question.
So here, now you're adding some things and on a UV galvo, the space of the bed is not huge. It's like, it's about like this. You can put bigger lenses in it to get bigger, but here I'm looking from the outside at your business, and you're used to doing these big, reclaim wood signs. So now you've really bought in another element that's going to give you different product lines with what that tool will do. So tell us how you've been using it and what you're exploring. I know you're only several months in, but I'm
Mhm.
sure you're adding new products to your business.
Yes. I have brought, I've honestly, I've done like 2 leather bookmarks before made of real leather that I cut on my Thunder and engraved. And they were great. But what I have been able to do is go more into the blank business. So what I will say is, prior to getting the UV, absolutely everything I have ever sold outside of a handful of cutting boards, I have made from scratch, which is a different market, because your production time, your labor time, all of that is way different than being able to purchase a blank and engrave a blank. And so what the
Yeah.
UV has done is it's opened that door for me to be able to get into the business with blanks. And so I have done, I mean, I do a lot of keychains. I do a lot of bookmarks of different material, keychains and bookmarks, both of leather and of wood, doing glass ornaments, doing bottle openers. Really, I haven't done glasses, so to say. I haven't used the rotary on it, but about any other material that you could put in it, I have tried and have used in one way or the other to expand my product lines.
Yeah. So you've done wood, leather, leatherette, glass. What about plastics? You tried plastics yet?
You know something, I haven't done acrylic yet. I've never had even a drop of acrylic in this space. I keep saying I'm going to order some. Um, and
I
I
don't do a lot
may,
of acrylic either.
but
But
again,
I
it does
do
this.
plastic. Like, like you could, like this is, I have face lotion and I could actually engrave the top of this. So you should try it with some fun projects.
Okay. Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk about some of the challenges, because this is your first
Mhm.
galvo based machine. So you were fairly fluent in the knowledge of the gantry and light burn and all that. And so here you go,
Yes.
this new machine. And oh my gosh, you've got Q pulse, you've got speed, you've got, all
Frequency.
these frequency, and these things are so new to you. What was that like for you as a newbie? And this is really why I wanted to have you on, because I can get a new machine and I've played with them that it's hard for me. It's not that it's a walk in the park, but I'm used to it now. And so I wanted to bring somebody on who this was a new first thing for you, to give some of your real world experience to somebody who maybe is wanting to get into to some kind of, galvo space.
And, the other thing to take into account is you have an engineering mind. I do not have the engineering mind. And so your brain processes and understands things much different than mine does. I don't know how many times I've read the blurb saying what Q pulse, frequency, and speed, how they affect each other, right? But that has been that's been a pretty solid learning curve. But what I have been able to do because of Facebook groups is I will, and YouTube and Googling and things like that. But honestly, primarily Facebook groups, I've just dove into those, gone into the specific Facebook group that I wanted to, and typed a search word, whether that is glass or whether that is leather or whether that is leatherette, and literally gone through a year, 2 year, 3 years of post. And when people, have put some of those settings in there, I write them down and I
Hmm.
give it a shot. And so then I at least have a starting point to my machine. And I've learned then how to tweak it from that starting point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good ad. There's not very many UV groups yet. I've seen two. I tried to talk about UV a lot in the Laser Lounge, but the only other one that I'm very familiar with is the Hotian UV group, and they've got some pretty good settings there. There's also a settings database that you can reference as a starting point that they have. I have it as a hot link at the top. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a whole nother animal, and it's not, you can't use the same settings as you would with a fiber. And so it's good to use those as a starting point. So getting over that learning curve of having to change up frequency, power, and speed, and Q pulse, it seems like you're over it now, but it's always a learning there. But I guess what I want to ask you is, did you feel like that piece of it has made you really understand how the laser is working more so
Yes.
than you did on a gantry?
Yes, very much so. On a gantry, you've got speeds and feeds, or, you've got, I always called it speeds and feeds before, and now my brain just stopped of what we call it now. But, but,
That's
you've
fine.
got, you've, you had a
Power and
couple
speed is it.
power
Yeah.
and speed. There you go. You've got a couple of simple settings, and, it was making sure mirrors were aligned. And for the most part, if your mirrors were aligned and if your mirrors were cleaned, you are going to be able to cut through anything, whether you had too thick of a line or not thick enough of a line. Where the UV is different. If your height setting is off, you're not marking it, or you're marking the wrong
Yeah.
side of the material in glass, for instance. And so it's those fine tuning those details and looking for, like on the UV, I love it. And I know it was you who told me this. You're like, you look for that bright light and you listen for that sound.
Yeah. The
And
hiss, the snake
that,
hiss.
yeah. And once you get that figured out, what you are searching for, um, being able to dial settings in on your own, once I had a starting point, became much easier, because I knew that, maybe that hiss was a little bit duller or deeper or whatever. And I knew that probably meant I needed to change the height adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Someone made a good example one day about frequency, and I don't know if it's true, but I mean, I kind of use it in my mind. And again, I'm not the expert in everything. I'm a T. I know, a little bit about a lot of areas. I'm not ultra deep in something, but the frequency is like sandpaper, like for a woodworker, right? So you go from 40 to 60 grit all the way up to 4,000 or whatever the highest numbers are, 2,000. And so that's how your frequency is. So when you start playing around with your frequency, you can hear it. And then when you start getting it in focal point, it really
Mhm.
starts to hum for you. That is something that's very different from the gantry world. And you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. So I do think people that start jumping over to gantry learn a lot more about how the lasers are actually working, and there's a lot more capability that you can do with that blank or that item that you're engraving. And you've probably seen this. Maybe you did a run and you're like, I don't love that much. And so you changed the angle and you went the other way.
Yep, 100%. And the other thing that I noticed, something was just off, right? This was a challenge I had. Something just wasn't focused. It wasn't reading right. And I just kept thinking, I think it's supposed to be better. And reached out to Pascal, and who connected me with Mark as well, right? And I had a bad combiner. I mean, it happens. Not all
Yep.
products are perfect when they come. He took care of it immediately, sent it to me. Now, I'm not going to lie. I sat on replacing that combiner in my machine for a period of time, because it kind of scared the hell out of me. And I was like, now what? How am I going to change this combiner? And I sent you a message right away when I did change it. I was like, what have I been sitting on this for a month for? I should have changed this before. But I will say the service that I have gotten from Pascal with questions or any of that has been like incredible and immediate. And knowing that we're on way different time zones, literally,
Yep.
probably 12 hours apart, it's pretty unbelievable knowing that, that they do provide that service.
Yeah, and I think with the galvo space in general too, there's a lot of tribal knowledge. You got to find the right people that have those machines that are kind of in your online network that usually can help you out. And so it's nice that we're adding more people to the deck and that there's more people we can reach out to. So let me jump to another question. What have you been making that's kind of different, that's really kind of changed your game in your shop? I'm hearing that you're doing some bookmarks and maybe some other things, but what new products and have you been able to bring on into your regular product line, and how is that shaping your business, or how do you see it shaping your business as we go into the fourth quarter?
Yeah. Um, One thing that I have added right away was reaching out to some of the realtors that I've worked with and offering them options to brand certain items. And so then I went from a direct to consumer, which I still consider my realtors direct to consumer because they're one offs, right? I mean, it's one
Yeah,
item
yeah.
that you're doing, to B2B. And instead of doing a single item for them, I'm doing some branding items for them. And they want 75 of them or 100 of them. And where I see that, where I fit into that is not necessarily, like, they could go and get 500 of something made for a certain price. They don't need most of the realtors that I work with don't need 500. They need that
Hmm.
75 to 100 of something. And
Yeah.
I can be that price point for them, being able to do that. And that's a creating one file and running 75 items, which we've just increased productivity because the UV provides incredible speed and you can set up jigs and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's been huge. I threw a few items here beside me. I mean, bottle openers, just coming up with cutesy words to put on them. I
Yeah.
actually am selling these not only in the floral boutiques, but also in a few bars that they have like little gift shop sections. I mean, reaching out to people like that. Like I
So
said,
how long
doing,
does something like that take to engrave? Like that one?
oh, I don't think it's a minute, less than a minute, I
Yeah.
think.
And so that's you're hitting on a point that I think May would agree to this, and I do in my shop. The galvos allow you to do more mass production, higher volume, quicker, and because it's an open face concept, you can easily you run one, you move it out, and the red dot tells you exactly where it's going to go. So it's so much easier to get it in the bed, it framed up because you're just replacing the thing and pushing a little button and it goes again. So the repeatability for high volume production is there with galvo machines.
And what's really important is no cleanup. The
Yeah.
amount of post-production time that I do coming out of the Thunder with different wood items compared to UV is almost none compared to solid amount of time that I would
Yeah.
spend after the product has been engraved.
Yeah. It's almost like and I know this isn't the case for everything, but a little bit in my shop, I'm creating some type of craft slash project in my gantry machines. Typically, I mean, I may engrave something, but I'm also cutting and stacking and gluing, and after the fact. Whereas on the galvo side, you're marking and engraving, and then it's usually done to the next one. So that's
Yeah.
where we're getting at with the high production kind of thing.
Mhm.
Let's see, what technical features have really benefited you the most? So what of this new laser being a totally different concept, what's been the biggest benefit? Is it time? Is it the way it works? That like you can do different material now, etc.
Every one of those things, I would say you'd mentioned the red dot before, or
Yeah,
the like the how
the
it
framing.
frames. Oh my goodness
Yeah,
gracious. Being able to set up jigs and easily pull product in and out. And I don't, when I do something like this, I don't put one in at a time. I've got jigs set up so I'm doing multiple bottle openers at a time. And when you've created your files, you're setting that up in your file so you can just go back and run and hit start when you open that file. So you're not having a lot of recreating the wheel every time on generic products like that. With those jigs, speed, I mean, just that speed and that time in general is huge. You do have to balance that out, because when you do start something on a larger laser, for instance, on a gantry, you're still in the, like, I never walk away, so to say. I mean,
yeah,
my business, or my structure of my workspace is how you lay out a kitchen. It's all a triangle,
yeah,
right? So you can get to everything. I can see the big laser running. But like with the Thunder, you may start a job and start working on something else. With the UV, it requires a little bit more change out, but
yeah.
you're also, in a third of the time or less than a third of the time on those items. And so you kind of have to balance like what works best for you in your business.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Do you feel like that getting a new machine, a galvo based machine, that you're more creative? Like, is it fostering ideas and new
Oh,
things for fourth quarter?
yeah, without a doubt. I'm so excited. I mean, I do a lot of ornaments every year. I do ornaments all year long though, because I do sympathy and memorial ornaments also. And but Christmas time is huge. And this year, being able to add leather and glass ornaments into the mix of that wood, it's just tripled the options and opportunities of getting to people. And it's a whole different style. I mean, when I do a 2-layer glued ornament, you're dealing with thick lines, you're dealing with some engraving, but it's a whole different look than when you're doing, and here I'll turn it backwards and we'll see if you can get it. When you're doing
Yeah,
something with really fine lines and fine details. So the looks of the ornaments are completely, it's a whole different world. So how I foresee it is, I do foresee the customers who come back year after year looking for that next wood ornament to complete their set, or that 2024 wood ornament. I do see them coming for that wood ornament still, but I also see them seeing this beautiful crystal option
Yeah.
and wanting to gift it to a whole different demographic.
Absolutely, that's true. And since you brought up the whole glass thing, and I know we've talked about this offline, and people kind of laugh and they'll say, once you get over the glass hump, you get it. But before you have, glass is not easy, is it? Tell us
No,
about your experience.
I mean, number one, it requires a lot of patience. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you at this point how many glass ornaments I've thrown away. But no matter what I have done, I have always been under the understanding of invest in the learning process. Okay. So if
Mhm.
I am tossing a glass ornament and watching that $5 go in the trash, I don't see it as a negative $5 going in the trash. It is a learning process. I have used every square inch of that ornament. I have tested every possible setting I could test. And, I take it just absolutely, like, every time I change a setting, it has written down, and it's written down where it is on that ornament or where it is on whatever material I'm
Yeah.
using. So I can go back and reference this, this turned this color on the leatherette and this turned this color on the leatherette. Which one am I going for? Which one am I going for on the glass? With glass, it's finicky. You are,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that says got to burn to learn. Amen. I mean, I believe in that completely, because if
And that's
all you're doing,
more so on the gantry than galvo, in my opinion.
yeah,
You can pull it off on the galvos.
if you are putting something in and not getting the results you're wanting in 3 or 4 times, and you're going on a Facebook group and immediately saying, I can't get this, help me, really, go back to your machine. I don't mean to be rude, but I am going to
Yeah.
speak this, because I'm a person who, if I've reached out, it's probably because I've spent hours behind my machine testing different things or researching different things. That's the only way we learn when
Yeah.
we go to switch to another product. So glass, if you don't have your focus right, you're shooting through the glass, or you're, creating like a haze on the opposite side. And so it, it's
Or you've
so,
marked your bed because it went through.
yes, yes, it's finicky, but, um, I definitely foresee, just as we're coming upon, as we're nearing fourth quarter, that the amount of time, which I'm not going to tell you, it's not been hours, it's been days that I've spent,
Yeah.
weeks probably, that I've spent time dialing that in. That's going to pay for itself in years to come.
Yeah.
It's going to pay
You're
for
learning
itself
how to
this
use
year.
that machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're learning how to use that machine, and if you get a new I don't know if you've worked with leather yet, or if you haven't started with plastic, it gives you a good baseline to know where to probably start tweaking and things like that. So, definitely the Galvo is the case for that. Let me see. I'm going to go through some questions. So I'm going to start kind of ramping us down so we can let you get back to shopping, or not shopping, but in your shop. What advice would you give to a maker who's thinking about a UV or a new laser or something, a new tool, but specifically you have a UV, but we can also frame it as somebody's thinking about adding more capability to their business, because I'm a big proponent of that. But what
Yeah.
advice would you give them, because you went through it?
Yeah. I would say, first of all, make a list. What are you creating now? And what are the goals of what you want to create or add to your shop? And once you have that list, and if you are wanting to expand in other markets, you also have to ask yourself 2 questions as you're wanting to expand. Are you wanting to stay true to what you're doing in your business right now? Or are you wanting to go a whole different direction? But kind of get the feel and the know of what you are looking for and what you're wanting, and then dive into what are the capabilities of those machines, and which ones will best fit your needs. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had my UV, and once I had some settings figured out, and probably 2 weeks in, I had some large orders of some branding items going out to somebody else. My son walked in one day and said, when are you getting your second UV? And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Like,
Hey, May and I say that all the time. I
so,
mean,
I mean,
I've got
that's a
5
goal, right?
galvos over here, but it's true, because you know what? As you were saying, you're standing there doing it. So if you had 2 of them, you're just and you'll realize that, and this is why I started buying more lasers when I had one, because the machine was my bottleneck. It wasn't me. It's
Right.
the machine. So
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. Continue on though. That's
Yeah.
fine. You're
So
talk
yeah, but I mean, it's figuring out that again, that YouTube that you guys did of compare and contrast is one of the best ones I have seen. I mean, and I would say that even if I wasn't talking directly to you, but that's a really, really good starting place because you very specifically between the two of you, you list out what pieces that you're making with the different machines, what products you're using, what are your raw materials, and figure out if that's what you're wanting, and then balance it out because there's a lot of these items that I currently am making that I could do on my
yeah.
Thunder, but
Yeah.
I am switching out my large sheets. I am creating huge jigs. My dot size is going to be bigger, so quality isn't going to be as good. And so it's figuring out if the justification, if those things of getting a UV is best for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're spot on with the recommendation to make a list, and what are you wanting to do with it? Because you may make that list and say, you know what? If you're going to want to do metal guns and do a lot of, analing and all that, this isn't really the machine for you because it's not a deep engraved like a fiber would. So you need to think about it if you're going to invest your money. I think UVs are, depending on brand, they're anywhere from like 4 to 15,000. You go up in wattage, but the wattage you got is a 10 watt, which is a very nice spot. It's a little faster than my 5 watt, and you're going to get good quality. So, yeah, that's a nice place to be. If someone calls me right now and says, I want a UV, what wattage? I would say, unless you don't have the funds at a minimum, I mean, I'd go with the 10 watt, you know. 5 watt is definitely doable, but if you can swing it, go with the 10. So that's really a great machine you got there. I want to see what you can do with leather pretty soon. Because you're going to love the leather. There's zero cleanup. And that's another thing. You go do ornaments in a gantry bed, and you got to go clean all that or sand it. I'm a sander. You
Me
don't
too.
have to do that on a UV. So
Right.
you need to look at the whole overall holistic time of getting that product handling time out the door.
Yes. Labor. I always look at it as like, what is the labor? What are the hours? What are the minutes going into it for me? And that's a
Yeah.
huge way that I validate what I'm doing and which machine I'm using.
Yeah, and I'm going to drop that video that May and I did in the chat here. I'll put it in both. It was May and I sat down for about an hour and we went over, it was gantry and galvo. We went over UV, fiber, and CO2 on all the different platforms and talked about each one, how we use it, what we do. We didn't really talk about brands. It was just the technology. And that's been kind of a great usage for people to learn of what does what, because they all have their sweet spot, right?
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to wrap us up here with one final question for you, which is really on your future plans. How do you see this new UV laser shaping your business and your projects as you move forward with your company?
Yeah. You know, what it has done is it's been able to help me introduce new product lines. And the next step is that business to business. I'm not saying that my direct to consumer is going to change because I've built an incredible organic clientele. And I don't foresee that. I love my clientele and I don't foresee that changing because that definitely has my heart. But if I can be once a week, be working on a B2B order, the the difference in the financial, the finances side of
Yeah,
things and the income producing results for the time that I'm putting in is going to make a huge difference. And so I just really see that that's outside of what I'm doing to be able to expand a little bit on the wholesale line. It's the B2B as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I think it's a good comments there, and I think for me, if I was going to summarize it, it really gives you more diversity in your shop. Someone can come to you and say, hey, you're talking about realtors and the floral side. They come to you and say, hey, we've got these plastic little sticks that we put in, I'm making it up, sticks that we put in flower arrangements. Could you put our logo on the back? Well, now you can, because it's plastic and you can easily do it. And it's something as simple as that. You're doing what you said for that branding for that client, that maybe it wasn't as simple for them anymore. And
Mhm.
maybe they're not branding their little sticks, but why not? I mean, it's something as simple, those are like probably 5 cents. So it gives you the diversity in your shop. And that's how I see it. And that's what I'm hearing from you as you speak.
Exactly.
Well, listen, I want to say thank you for coming on today. I'm glad that you accepted my hard push to say, hey, in 2 days, we're going to do this. And really, what I wanted to do is just give the users or the listeners some exposure to somebody who is new to it and has gotten it. And so as that, I'm just going to let you do just a wrap up of, here's my initial thoughts, here's what was hard, here's what was great, and why it's been an impact to you. So why don't you go ahead and say that?
Yeah, initially it was curiosity and wondering how I could speed up a few things and add a few things into my shop. And just again, I'm going to just go back to Facebook groups. Like, it is okay to spend, if you're going to be sitting down to watch TV or spending time to scroll on TikTok, why don't you sit down and pull up one of those Facebook groups that will benefit your business and just read comments? Type in
Yeah.
a keyword, and read comments and figure out what's working for people, because incredible people who have been in this industry, who understand, all of the frequency and the cue pulls and the power and the speed, those people are very generously donating of their time by typing in replies. So spend some time doing that and just dive in. You know, it, is it a whole new learning curve? Yeah, it's a new learning curve, but be patient and go into it with the mindset of the possibility of what you can create. And I think that's the big thing is, where do you want your business to grow? And are you willing to learn to get there?
That's a great final comment there. And I think that's, if you're wanting to push your business and learn some new things and do different things in your shop, this is one option of one type of laser. And I want to thank you for coming on today. And I also want to thank our sponsors of the show, and they are Thunder Laser USA, Phantom CNC, Rotoboss Rotary Attachments, and also a new one that we have now is, and I said it all along, I said it incorrectly, so I'm going to help try to educate the community. I was calling it Hey Ocean, like Billy Ocean, like old school, but it's called Ho, like Ho Tien. So it's actually two
Hotian.
different words. Ho Tien. So I'm going to try to help educate the community on how to say it better. So
That's
thank you
perfect.
very much, Amanda. And we're going to take this and put it up on YouTube, and then we're going to put it on a podcast so that we can have it for other people to listen later on as they're working in their shop. But if you guys in the Laser Lounge have any questions for myself or Amanda, she's an active member in there, and she's open to take any questions as well. So, Amanda, you have a blessed day and get back to what it is you're doing. And we'll see you in the Facebook group.
Hey, thanks, Alicia. I appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely.